Welcome to the Debunkers podcast.
Okay, you know how people talk about the economy like it's some super complicated machine only geniuses understand? Well, lately it feels more like, I don't know, a reality TV show. One minute a report says we're all spending like crazy, the next it's like we're hiding cash under the floorboards. Seriously, it's enough to give you whiplash. So today, we're going to try and make sense of it. We're doing a deep dive into all these signals, consumer spending, debt, what's happening in retail, and yeah, the big question, where is this whole thing heading?
Exactly. And what's really fascinating right now is how you can look at different pieces of data and they just seem to paint completely different pictures. It really depends on who's interpreting it, So our mission today really is to cut through some of that noise, the conflicting headlines you see, the jargon from places like the Fed or economic forecasts.
Right.
We want to try and give you a clearer picture of what might actually be going on with your money and, the wider economy. Connect the dots, basically. See the so what for everyday life.
All right, let's start with the wallet then. Are we spending or saving? What's the collective mood?
Well, it's definitely a mixed bag. If you look at the Federal Reserve's G2019 Consumer Credit Report for May 2025, that's their monthly check on borrowing. Total consumer credit went up, but only at a 1.2% annual rate. So on the surface, that sounds, okay, steady.
Okay, steady.
Okay.
But here's where it gets really interesting, right? Because while the total number went up a bit, revolving credit, basically, your credit card balances, that actually fell by 3.2%. But then non-revolving credit, so like car loans, student loans, that stuff rose by 2.8%. So it's like we're slamming the brakes on the credit cards, but still okay signing up for other types of loans.
That's exactly the picture. And the New York Fed's report on household debt for the first quarter of 2025 adds more context here. Total household debt did go up slightly to $18.2 trillion. That's about a $167 billion increase. But just like you said, credit card balances specifically dropped by $29 billion in that first quarter. And get this, auto loan balances also went down by $13 billion. That's only the second time that's happened since way back in 2011. Yeah. Meanwhile, things like home equity lines of credit, HELOCs, and student loans, they're still growing. So it really suggests consumers are being super selective. It's almost like we're saying, okay, fine, I'll take on that fixed car loan, but absolutely no more variable rate credit card debt. Thank you very much.
Right. And this caution fits with the bigger picture on spending and saving, too. The Bureau of Economic Analysis, their report for May 2025, it showed personal income actually went down, disposable income down, too. And personal spending, what they call PCE, also dipped slightly. We're talking like 0.4%, 0.6%, 0.1% drops. Small, but still down. And yet the personal saving rate is 4.5%. So incomes are shrinking a bit, we're spending a tiny bit less, and we're paying down credit cards. Are we suddenly becoming super responsible or just, scared to swipe? Maybe everyone got the same financial therapist memo. Put down the card.
Well, it certainly points towards a significant behavioral shift. There's this concept, deleveraging, which we heard a lot about after the 2008 crisis. It's basically when people actively try to pay down their debt. Often it's because they're worried about jobs or maybe credit just gets tighter. The fact that savings are up a bit while credit card debt is down, even as incomes dip, that really signals a kind of defensive posture. It suggests people might be prioritizing getting their financial house in order, maybe bracing for, whatever comes next, a more cautious economic era, perhaps.
Okay, so if everyone's being cautious, how does something like Amazon Prime Day fit in? Because Amazon was definitely shouting from the rooftops about it. Their press release, July 12th, called it the biggest Prime Day event ever, record sales, record savings. They even expanded it to 4 days. The Amazon VP, Jamil Ghani, said shoppers wanted more time to shop and save. Sounds like a huge party, right? But hold on, because that's not the only story out there.
No, it's definitely not. This is where you see that conflicting data really clearly. While Amazon celebrated those record sales, there's another perspective. One source, called the Prime Day Flop Analysis, argued that extending it to 4 days wasn't about shopper demand at all. They called it a defensive move. Their take is that consumer demand is actually pretty weak, that people are feeling, tapped out.
Right.
And there's some data to back that up. Bloomberg reported that about 1 in 4 shoppers plan to skip Prime Day, citing tariffs as a reason. And over half, 57%, said they were watching prices much more closely this year. NBC News analysts were also kind of unsure if the extra days would really lead to more overall sales, and Salesforce noted consumers seemed cautious, maybe buying things early then pulling back. So it's like, yeah, maybe they hit a record number over 4 days instead of 2, but does that mean the underlying demand was actually strong? Or were they just trying harder to move inventory? It's like getting a medal for showing up 4 days straight. Sure, you were there, but how intense was the workout?
Especially if you're trying to clear that inventory before tariffs make everything even more expensive. That fits, doesn't it? The EY retail sales report for June, it talked about demand destruction from tariff. Basically, higher prices are making people buy less. Nominal sales were up slightly, 0.6% in June, but when you adjust for inflation, the picture looks softer. Electronics and appliances, their actual sales volume dropped 2%. Furniture down 1.1%. Even the small bump in car sales they mentioned was maybe just people rushing to buy before tariffs hit harder, a payback, they called it. So yeah, was Prime Day a big celebration or more like a pre-tariff clearance sale?
That really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it leads us right into, well, the tariff issue itself, the elephant in the room.
Oh yes, tariffs. Everyone's favorite economic topic. Always simple and straightforward. Not Okay, let's unpack this. It's basically a tax on stuff brought in from other countries. But who ends up footing the bill? Spoiler, usually it's us, you.
And the cost is becoming quite significant. The Yale Budget Lab, they put out a report July 23rd, 2025. They estimate the average effective tariff rate consumers are facing is now 20.2%.
20%.
Yeah, that's apparently the highest it's been since 1911, if you can believe that. And that translates, they estimate, to an average loss of about $2,700 in household income for 2025. And what's really critical here is that tariffs are what economists call a regressive tax, meaning they hit lower income households much harder as a percentage of their income. We're talking over 3 times the impact compared to high income households. So, that pair of shoes you wanted might be 40% pricier. Clothes up 36%. Even a new car up over 13%, adding something like $6,300 to the average cost.
Wow, $6,300 extra on a car. That's huge. And it's not just us feeling it, right? Small businesses must be getting hammered.
Absolutely. The Joint Economic Committee had a report back in May. It found 30% of small business owners were planning price hikes in March, the highest rate in a year. And employment at the really small firms, fewer than 10 employees, that's actually down 3% since President Trump's second term started.
And you hear these awful stories like Nancy Clark, a consultant, saw lumber prices shoot up 25% just because tariffs were predicted, had to change her bids. Amber Morgan imports flowers, she's just looking at maybe $55,000 to $80,000 a year just in tariffs. That's like 2 salaries she can't give raises, can't hire. And Beth Beniki, selling baby products, tariffs just made her business impossible, said her house was on the line. It's brutal. You understand why they say uncertainty is sometimes even worse than the cost itself?
It's incredibly tough. And it shows, the immense pressure they're under. Some businesses did try to adapt, of course. We heard about third-party sellers on Amazon stocking up before tariffs hit hard. Some used Prime Day specifically to clear out that older pre-tariff inventory, like Patrick Jones from Outdoor Fellow. He doubled his inventory, offered big discounts just to move that stock. It shows ingenuity, definitely, but also desperation, maybe. It's a constant scramble.
Okay, so we've got cautious consumers, shaky retail numbers, struggling small businesses. Where does this leave us? What are the big brains saying about the future? Is the R-word recession back on the table, or is this just, turbulence?
Well, there are definitely some forecasters waving red flags. Expanda, for instance, put out a pretty stark prediction back in December 2024. Their experts said a deep global recession starting around spring 2025 was very likely, and potentially deeper and longer than usual.
Oof, deep and long.
Yeah. Tom Bungard, their VP of forecasting, even said, all our models point to this, and we don't like it either. They seem pretty convinced, even while acknowledging most other analysts are still predicting a soft landing. Expand is bracing for a hard landing. They base this on 4 main things. First, that inverted U.S. Treasury yield curve. That's where short-term bonds pay more than long-term ones. Historically, that's been an almost flawless predictor of recessions.
All right, I've heard of that one.
Second, rising unemployment. It's crept up from around 3.5% to 4.3% since mid-2023, and usually unemployment keeps rising before a recession really bites. Third, the Fed cutting interest rates. They've brought rates down from about 5.3% to 4.3% this year, and very often you see a recession kick in shortly after the Fed starts cutting rates like that.
Okay, yield curve, unemployment, Fed rates. What's their 4th indicator? Does it seal the deal?
Well, interestingly, no. Their 4th one, their own technical analysis of economic momentum, is the only one not screaming recession yet. It's showing the economy kind of moving sideways. It's not growing strongly, but hasn't fully dipped into decline either, according to that specific measure. So there's this weird tension even in their own forecast, maybe suggesting a period of stagnation before a potential drop.
Interesting. Sideways. And besides Expana, are there other warning signs flashing?
There are. The Ludwig Institute, they reported just recently, July 22nd, that weekly earnings actually declined for the second quarter in a row. And their measure of functional unemployment, which counts not just the officially jobless, but also underemployed people and those who've given up looking at, stayed really high, over 24% for 5 straight months.
Really only 4%.
Yeah. And the report also highlighted a widening gender pay gap and things getting worse for Black workers' earnings.
Ouch. Yeah, it really feels like some groups aren't just being left behind, they're actually losing ground. That stands out.
It does. And if you connect all this back to the Fed, well, Chair Powell publicly keeps saying the economy is solid. That Prime Day flop, source mentioned something interesting. They noted that some internal Fed documents apparently acknowledge there's a real non-zero risk. They might have to cut rates back towards zero if demand keeps weakening.
So even if they're saying all clear publicly,
They might be quietly prepping for choppier waters. It suggests, perhaps, a bit more concern internally than the official statements let on, acknowledging the possibility at least.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, it's a seriously mixed picture. We've got consumers being careful with credit cards but still taking loans, big retailers claiming records while maybe just clearing shelves, small businesses getting squeezed by tariffs, and forecasters arguing about a soft landing versus a crash.
It really is a paradox, isn't it? You have this push and pull. Cautious consumers, but ongoing economic pressures like tariffs. Some numbers look okay on the surface, the nominal figures, but once you adjust for inflation, you see that underlying softness. You see the challenges, especially hitting, certain households and smaller businesses harder. There's resilience, yes, but also definite signs of strain. It's complex.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Are these just, bumps in the road on this crazy economic ride? Or are we actually seeing a bigger shift in how we handle our money, how we spend, how we save, especially with trade wars and shaky confidence in the mix? Maybe keep an extra eye on those receipts, on that credit card statement, because this economic reality show, the next episode's being written right now, and your wallet might just be the star. What really stood out to you from all this today? How might these trends make you think about your own plans for the rest of this year?
But sadly, it seems we've run out of time for today.
Thank you so much for listening and for being such an engaged part of our podcast.
We always value your participation.
Until our next deep dive together.
Goodbye for now, and we'll see you next time.